On the highway I realized the brakes had failed. My wife and child were in the car and a white car kept blocking me. I had to act fast to save us. I turned on cruise control on the highway, but I found that the brakes didn't work. No matter how hard I stepped on the brakes, the speed remained at 100 kilometers per hour. There is a large truck on the right side in front. On the left, there was a white sedan driving at a snail's pace in the overtaking lane, side by side with the truck. My wife was feeding the baby snacks in the back seat. She saw that the car was about to crash and asked me why I didn't slow down. I turned and looked at her. I looked into her eyes in the rearview mirror and said bitterly, "Fasten your seat belts and hold on to the handlebars. I love you." As I honked the horn desperately, my wife had already anticipated what was happening. The car in front was still driving at a snail's pace, probably only about 70 kilometers per hour. I hate cars that slow down in the passing lane. I didn't dare to honk the horn, and the white car finally increased its speed slightly. But before I could even breathe a sigh of relief, something horrible happened. The brake lights of the white car suddenly lit up. There was clearly no obstacle in front of him, but he thought my honking was annoying and braked on purpose to scare me. But the problem is I can't brake at all. With a loud bang, my car crashed into it. The car shook violently. My wife grabbed the handle and I held the steering wheel tightly. If I deviated from the lane, I would be swept into the truck next to us. Fortunately, the white car was meant to scare me, and the owner probably stepped on the brake and switched to the accelerator in an instant. So when I hit him, he was also startled, stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and pulled away. We passed the truck, the window of the white car rolled down, and a man waved at me, cursing something. He started to pull over to the side lane and asked me to stop. My wife rolled down the window and anxiously shouted to him that the brakes were broken. But with such great wind resistance, how could the sound possibly get through? Seeing that I left directly, the white car immediately caught up with me. The man was furious. It was clearly him who was driving at a snail's pace and deliberately braked to scare me, but now it was as if he had suffered a great injustice and he gave me the middle finger. He stepped on the accelerator and rushed in front of me again. This guy actually wanted to play on the highway without stopping. When an unscrupulous driver takes to the road, it often means bringing death to any innocent family. As soon as the front of his car blocked me, I rammed into it hard. With another loud bang, the front of his car was smashed by me. My car rushed out and the huge force made the car body lose balance. I quickly turned on the lane change assist and tried to hold the steering wheel tightly. The faster we go, the less we should panic. If we accidentally steer the car off course, we will be in big trouble and die. My wife was sitting in the back and started crying out of fear. How could we have run into someone like this? In my heart, I really want to skin this car owner alive. My wife and my children were in the car. Our lives were hanging by a thread, but he didn't think he was wrong. He just thought we were the ones who rear-ended the car maliciously and caused the accident by running away. Sure enough, the white car soon caught up again. The front of his car was clearly smashed to pieces, but he still refused to let us go. I could only maintain a speed of 100 kilometers per hour, but he stepped on the accelerator and rushed ahead of us. My heart skipped a beat and I immediately had a bad feeling. Suddenly his car window opened. A bucket of freshly eaten instant noodles was thrown out of his car and hit my windshield directly. The instant noodle soup directly covered my glass, making it completely impossible for me to see what was ahead. I quickly started my wipers, but my windows were covered in a film of oil. At this moment, our life and death are in the hands of God. We couldn't see anything in front of us. The more I scraped off the oil film, the dirtier it became. I could only scrape off the instant noodles first and let the rest dry naturally, which allowed me to barely see clearly ahead. My wife was sitting in the back, shaking with tears, but she quickly picked up her phone and called the traffic police. My husband and I were on the freeway and our brakes went out. A car deliberately stopped us and threw instant noodles at us. "Please, police, please save our family." Wiping away tears, the wife connected her phone to Bluetooth and cried, "Honey, the police want to ask for directions, but I don't know where it is." After connecting to Bluetooth, I said, "We just passed the Huangjiadan Expressway exit and headed south of the city." The police asked, "What is the color of your car and what is the license plate number?" I said, "Frosted gray, license plate number 72C32. We will immediately block the relevant highway entrance ahead and send police cars to protect the road. Can you see the license plate number of the car causing trouble next to you? We will contact him and ask him to get away immediately. I don't remember his license plate number and I can't see it at the moment. He was driving in the same lane as me." "Got it. We'll check all the surveillance cameras right away. Please keep driving." I swallowed and asked the question that mattered to me, How far am I from the nearest safe lane? There was silence for a few seconds, and then they said, 80 kilometers, we will do our best to protect you. In an instant I felt hopeless. 80 kilometers, almost the distance between the two cities. The white car was still driving in the same lane as mine, and the owner of the car was cursing at me. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I knew it must be very unpleasant. Most importantly, an emergency lane has begun to appear ahead. At this time, if I could change lanes to the emergency lane, it would greatly increase our family's chances of survival. The problem is this white car. He blocked my way to the right at the same speed, making it impossible for me to change lanes to the emergency lane. My wife was sitting in the back. She wiped away her tears, unbuckled her seat belt and said, "Honey, did you turn on the lane assist? It's open. Come out quickly, I'll switch places with you." I raised my head and stared at my wife's face through the rearview mirror. She cried and said, "It's easier to survive in the back seat, please let me drive." I didn't say anything, just gripped the steering wheel tightly. She was still begging me to change seats. "If you leave, what will happen to my daughter and I? I can't make much money to support my daughter. It's better for you to survive than for me." I turned around and glanced at my daughter. She was still babbling and had no idea that she was going through a crisis. She held the biscuit and waved her hands happily. I forced a smile and said to my daughter, "Baby, call me Daddy." She has never called him Daddy. If I were to die here today, at least I want to hear her call me Daddy. My daughter giggled at me, shook the biscuit and said "Ip yup." Seeing that I didn't change position, my wife hurriedly came to pull my clothes. My nose felt sore and I whispered, "Don't use the baby as an excuse, listen carefully." I wiped away my tears and spoke with sobs. "I've never believed in ghosts in my life, but if I can meet you again, I hope there is an afterlife." My wife looked at me blankly. But then my heart tightened. Because of the white car, we overtook again from the right lane. I don't know what he wants to do, but anything he does makes me nervous. I knew who I had provoked. Any driver who dares to drive at a snail's pace in the overtaking lane is either a fool or has no respect for life. Judging from this man's actions, he has no respect for life at all. His car window opened again and something was thrown out. Before I could see clearly what it was, the car window in front of me was shattered. My wife let out a scream of pain. I turned my head and was stunned. A screwdriver came in through the windshield, and not only did it break my glass, but at the same time, with the tremendous force of a speed of 100 hours, it directly pierced the entire passenger seat and nailed it hard on my wife's shoulder. I turned around and saw my wife in the back seat nailed to the seat by a screwdriver. She was covering her shoulder and bleeding profusely. For a moment my brain went blank. One thought kept running through my mind. Hit him to death. My daughter, who was smiling at first, started crying loudly out of fear. I looked at her and found that a piece of glass had pierced her little face, leaving it covered in blood. The wife was in so much pain that her face turned pale, but when she saw her daughter was injured, she struggled to grab the screwdriver and pulled hard. She rushed to her daughter and said anxiously, "Baby, don't be afraid." My wife checked our daughter's wound and cried weakly to me. The baby's face was scratched. There was glass stuck in the flesh. I dare not move. When I looked at this scene in the rearview mirror, my heart was broken. Just now, my wife was peeling grapes for me in the back seat, and my daughter was holding some cookies and laughing happily. But now, one of them was pierced through the shoulder and the other's face was covered in blood. I told myself that if I could survive, I would definitely kill the driver of the white car. The right windshield had been shattered, and depending on my speed, glass shards were blown in from time to time. I drove with fear and hatred in my heart. I once saw a news report about a naughty kid throwing rocks onto a highway. The rocks not only shattered the windshield but also caused the heads of people in the car to explode, killing them instantly. Just today my family came so close to this horrible death. If it had been a little more crooked, the screwdriver would have pierced my wife's head or heart. If I was the only one in the car, I would definitely hit him to death. But now I have to calm down. No matter how much my heart aches, I must force myself to suppress it with reason and protect my family's safety. At this moment, the white car in front suddenly raised the middle finger to me again. All of a sudden, a bold and feasible method came to me. The white car always likes to run in front of me to throw things, so can I just follow his car and let him clear the way for me? If there is an obstacle ahead, he will definitely avoid it for me first. If he were to brake, the worst that could happen would be for me to hit the back of his car, using his brakes and the weight of his car to force me to stop. In other words, if he wants to get off the highway and I follow him, the moment he slows down, I can rear-end him and push him off the cliff to ensure my safety. He will act as a buffer for me when the time comes, and this is also a way for my family to survive. When I thought of this solution, I gritted my teeth. I wanted to avoid all innocent people. It was he who dragged me into a deeper abyss. In that case, I might as well pull him into the abyss with me and let him take the blame for me. Thinking of this, I immediately turned the steering wheel and followed the white car. He probably didn't expect me to do this, and soon he changed lanes to the left and I followed him to the left. He changed lanes to the right and I followed him to the right. The white car, which originally took the initiative, now becomes very passive. My wife also saw my intention. She covered her wound and said weakly, "Honey, follow me closely." I nodded and followed the white car with full concentration. He seemed to become honest and drove forward steadily. But suddenly, something unexpected happened. The white car suddenly changed lanes to the left at such a fast speed that he almost hit the guardrail. Thanks to my instinct to use the white car as a shield, I also changed lanes urgently when he changed lanes. It was only then that I realized that there was a large box on the road ahead. It was probably dropped on the road by a truck. This white car still wants to kill me. He deliberately changed lanes when the distance was so close, hoping that I would hit him and cause a car accident and death. I felt a chill on my back, but I continued to follow him closely. This is very dangerous, but it is the only way to protect my family. Seeing how difficult I was, the white car began to slow down slowly and I couldn't brake, so of course I crashed directly into the back of his car. I rear-ended another car, and at that moment I held the steering wheel tightly and he finally stepped on the brakes. I breathed a sigh of relief because my speed was noticeably slowing down. From 100 yards, slowly dropped to 90, and then to 80. If this continues, I should be able to use the weight and brakes of the white car to make myself slower and slower. I even thought about it. When I slowed down enough, I would hit the guardrail directly, hit the trees at a slower speed, and let the trees brake for me. But the next second, Che behaved like a monster again. When I turned the steering wheel toward the guardrail, the white car suddenly accelerated and changed lanes, and my speed immediately increased. I shouted anxiously, "Hold on!" The car hit the guardrail hard. An experienced driver would let the unmanned co-pilot bear the impact, but I couldn't move, my family was in the car. I have to use my own body to carry it. The hood of the car was blown off by the guardrail. I turned the steering wheel hard to the left so that the car body was close to the guardrail to achieve a deceleration effect. But even so, when we hit the tree, the car was going nearly 50 kilometers per hour. With a loud bang, I tried to press my body backwards, but under the huge inertia of the collision, I couldn't stop my body from falling forward. The airbag popped out and hit my chest hard, making my eyes go black and almost making me unable to breathe. I tried to breathe deeply, but it felt like something was blocking my chest, causing my heart to palpitate, my head to turn dizzy, and my vision to go black. I turned back with difficulty to check on my wife and children. My wife had fallen into a coma, and my daughter was still lying in the safety seat, her whole face covered in blood, crying loudly at me. I have never seen such a heart-wrenching scene. I tried hard to unbuckle my seat belt, but the speed of the car that hit me was too fast, my car was badly damaged and my legs were stuck. The most important thing is that the white car also stopped in front. The driver of the white car got out, climbed over the railing and walked towards us. He did not come to rescue us immediately, but took out his cell phone and took pictures of us. He came to the car window, pointed the camera at me and said, "Look, this idiot was driving recklessly on the highway, rear-ended me and tried to run away, but now I've got him." Really? In his eyes, he thought I was the bad guy. I rolled down the window, but before I could say anything, he grabbed my hair and slapped me hard in the face. "Keep going. Don't you like to honk the horn randomly? Don't you like to hit and run? Today you ran into me, let me tell you, I will never tolerate you rubbish." I couldn't speak at all, because he took his cell phone and smashed it against my mouth again and again. As he smashed the car, he cursed, "I told you to rear in the car. I told you to flee. I told you to honk the horn to hurry people along." I spat out a large mouthful of blood in pain, and only then did he notice my wife and children behind us. He said in a cold voice, "So the whole family is here? When you were driving recklessly, did your family try to stop you from doing stupid things? Now the whole family is here." He stretched himself, still not planning to save us, but walked to a nearby rock and sat down, saying calmly, "Okay, you wait for the compensation." I spat out another mouthful of blood and said weakly, "My brakes have been broken for a long time. I honked the horn not to hurry you, but because I was afraid of hitting you. But you didn't avoid me and you even stepped on the brakes to scare me?" "Oh right. He said nonchalantly, "Your brakes didn't break earlier or later, but just happened to break when you rear-ended me. I know there's no point in me saying anything. He will just think I'm lying and that I'm deceiving him. When someone is determined to make trouble, any legitimate reason will become an excuse. Now, I only care about the safety of my wife and children in the back seat. Because I noticed that the car started to smoke. I was worried the car might catch fire. I tried to pull my legs out, but the console held my legs tightly. My leg is fine, the problem is that I can't pull it out. I tried to adjust the seat back, but the problem was that there was a safety seat behind me that blocked my chair. If I adjusted it further back, I would be on top of my daughter. The driver of the white car saw that I was still struggling, and he laughed. "Look at what kind of character you are now. Why did you go crazy in the first place?" I yelled, "Can you please call an ambulance first? My wife and children are in the car." He shrugged and said innocently, "If they die, they die. They are your wife and children, not mine." He took out his phone and filmed me saying, "Look, this rubbish car is starting to burn. Soon the whole family will burn to death. This is the retribution for reckless driving." I was extremely anxious. If this continues, my family members will really die here. Just then, my wife suddenly moved. She looked at me dazedly and said weakly, "Husband?" I heard her shouting and I said excitedly, "Wife, the car is on fire, get our daughter out first." She struggled to sit up. Because her right shoulder was pierced by a screwdriver, she could only use her left hand to unfasten her daughter's seat belt. After she finally untied it, she asked me anxiously, "Why don't you come out yet?" "I'm stuck. Take my daughter out first." The wife didn't dare to delay at this time. She picked up her daughter with one hand, unscrewed the car door forcefully and finally got out of the car. After she went down, she cried and said to me, "Hubby, you come down too." The front of the car was already on fire. I tried hard, but it was of no avail. The wife was so anxious that she said to the driver of the white car, "Why are you just standing there? You are the one who caused all this trouble. Why didn't you save the man?" The driver of the white car glanced at my wife, then slowly walked to my car. He suddenly took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. Then he lowered his head, lit the cigarette with the fire from my car, and laughed, "In your next life, drive well." After saying that, he turned around and left in a cool manner. The wife was anxious, so she put her daughter down and pulled his arm. "Why didn't you save him? How many times are you going to harm our family?" The driver of the white car suddenly slapped my wife hard on the face. My wife was beaten to the ground, and the driver of the white car pointed at her nose and cursed, "Because your whole family is garbage. You are all scum on the road, scum. I saved him today. I don't know how many innocent families will be killed by him in the future." The wife covered her face and cried, "Our brakes were broken. But you deliberately stepped on the brakes in front of us." The driver of the white car said impatiently, "Your brakes are not broken, your conscience is broken." I watched my wife being beaten and my hatred reached its peak. At this time, my wife wanted to come to my rescue and I said anxiously, "Don't worry about me, just take care of our daughter. Now that my daughter is no longer in the car, I don't have to worry about crushing her." I insist on pushing the seat back, and the safety seat and the driver's seat are crushed and damaged, gradually leaving space for my legs. The driver of the white car still felt unsatisfied, so he suddenly raised his leg and kicked my wife hard in the face, yelling, "If you hadn't honked the horn so hard at the beginning, there wouldn't have been so much trouble." I hate it most when people keep honking their horns. At this moment, my legs can finally move. The car also caught fire. I felt very burned and I managed to escape with great difficulty. The driver of the white car saw me in such a mess. He laughed and said, "I am so happy, you beast. Will you dare to drive recklessly again in the future?" I gasped and walked towards the driver of the white car. He said smugly, "I'm telling you, the police will be here soon. You're involved in a hit and run. You're done for. I'll tell the police exactly what you did." I ignored him and squatted down to check on my daughter. The daughter's eyes were filled with tears and her face was covered in blood. But she wasn't crying now. Seeing me coming, she suddenly stretched out her two little hands to me, asking me to hug her and comfort her. This scene is more heartbreaking to me than crying. At this time, a passing car stopped next to us. The driver asked us, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I said gratefully, "Please take my wife and children to the hospital." The other party quickly said it was no problem, but the driver of the white car was still cursing at me. "Brother, don't help. This family has no manners. If you send them to the hospital, they will run away immediately." I said coldly, "I'm not getting in the car. I'm staying here. I just told myself that. If I survive, I'm going to skin this beast. But I am a rational man and I will not get into conflict with others when my wife and children are present." The driver who came later was a kind man and quickly arranged for my wife and children to get in the car. I thanked him gratefully and asked him to take the person to the nearest hospital. My wife rolled down the car window and said to me worriedly, "Honey?" I said gently, It's okay, I'll stay and take care of it, don't worry. The wife shook her head and cried, "Husband, beat him." I laughed. In the past, no matter what happened, my wife would always advise me to stay calm. Today she issued an order she had never given before. I stroked her head and whispered, "Okay." They set off. I watched the car drive away and turned to look at the driver of the white car. He even recorded the screen with his phone. You heard it, this couple said they wanted to beat me up. They still don't know they are wrong and they want to use violence to intimidate me. I don't understand this era. Why do people use their phones to take pictures of others when something happens? Do you think whoever holds the phone is right? I walked towards the driver of the white car and he sneered at me and said, "Try to touch me. I tell you, if you dare to touch me, I will just lie down on the ground." I asked, "Why are you driving over 70 in the passing lane on the freeway?" He said impatiently, "What's your business? You're the one who rear-ended me and fled. I'm in the right. Go ahead and hit me. You're not in the right, but you're hitting me. I just want to change my Mercedes. Hurry up and stop talking nonsense." I threw my phone at the driver. He asked, "What are you doing? Are you still going to hit me with your phone?" I said, "It contains the conversation record between me and the police. When we were rear-ended, my brakes broke and I asked the police for help." He looked at the phone screen and his expression suddenly turned ugly. I said, "I didn't hit and run. Instead, you raced against me on the road, deliberately stopped and threw things at my car. You were suspected of dangerous driving and intentional injury when you knew that there would be serious consequences. Do you know? You are going to jail." He controlled my phone in disbelief and said blankly, This. I walked up to him and looked him straight in the eyes. The driver of the white car swallowed and said, "Wait a minute, brother, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I braked incorrectly at that time." I shook my head and said, "You don't know you're wrong, you just know you're going to die." In an instant, his face changed drastically and he was so scared that he dropped the cigarette. He quickly ran back. "But this is a green belt within the guardrail, how can he run fast?" He staggered and nearly fell, but I caught up with him and grabbed his hair. I said coldly, "You've passed the driving test, right? Besides being rude, what does honking the horn mean?" He said, "Give early warning?" I roared, "If you don't like the sound of speakers, then forget about it." I pressed his head to the ground. He resisted frantically, but I had already picked up the burning cigarette butt and stuffed it hard into his ear canal. Under the burning of the cigarette, he screamed hysterically, his body struggling and twisting, and I grabbed the cigarette and twisted it hard in his ear, roaring, "Since you know it means early warning, why are you pretending here?" He cried, "Let me go. Let me go now." How could I let go? The driver of the white car tried to push me away, but I had already pressed my whole body on his head and hit his ears hard. He screamed in pain and I sneered, "You don't like to listen to the loudspeaker, right? I'll let you listen to it enough." I dragged him to the white car, opened the door and said coldly, "Did your left ear become deaf from the burn? Forget about the other one." I grabbed his hair and slammed him hard on the steering wheel. The horn of the white car suddenly sounded, and I pressed his head against it. The strong sound of the horn made him scream in discomfort. He started to raise his foot and kick my chest, trying to kick me away. I was in pain, but I didn't give in. I let him kick me in the chest again and again. This palpitation is far less than the fear that my family members felt on the highway just now. Since he wants to kick, then kick as much as you want. I also raised my foot and kicked him on the head again and again. Just now he kicked my wife in the head. Now I will return it to him tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold. He huddled on the steering wheel, yelling, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I didn't care about his pleas for mercy at all. Because just now he almost killed my entire family. My beloved family members almost lost their lives at the hands of this beast. I will not be soft-hearted or merciful at all. In my mind, the only images were of my wife crying and my daughter with blood all over her face, stretching out her little hands to me for a hug. You just threw away the screwdriver and instant noodles, didn't you? Come on, do you have anything else? I searched his car and actually found instant noodles and a wrench in the passenger seat drawer. He had thrown the screwdriver away long ago. He shouted anxiously, Don't mess around. Someone might die. I asked, When you threw things at me on the highway, did you ever think someone might die? I picked up the wrench and remembered that my wife's shoulder was pierced by the screwdriver, so I hit him hard on the shoulder. I heard the sound of bones breaking. Even though he was screaming like a pig being slaughtered, I could hear the sound. His whole body was twisting like a maggot, and this was the only way he could struggle at the moment. I took my time and hit him on the other shoulder. Both of his shoulders were broken and he passed out from the pain. I said nothing but opened the instant noodles package and said coldly, You like instant noodles very much, don't you? Come, I'll feed you. The driver of the white car fainted and lay on the ground, and I picked up the half bottle of mineral water in the car, poured the chili oil and chili powder into the bottle, and shook it vigorously to mix them evenly. Then I held his face and poured pepper water into his nose. The driver of the white car, who had fainted, suddenly woke up under this severe stimulation and coughed hard in pain, trying to cough out the chili oil in his lungs. I yelled, "Who told you to cough?" Just like he had slapped me in the mouth just now, I smashed the wrench into his mouth. I broke several of his teeth. He fell to the ground, twitching and coughing. What he coughed out was not just chili oil but also blood. I stepped on his head and said seriously, "I have something to say to you. What I hate most is scum. You were driving on the highway at a snail's pace, occupying the passing lane, and deliberately braking the car behind you and throwing objects out. If I let you go so easily today, you don't know how many innocent people you will kill." He tried hard to get up, but he had no strength left. "I'm going to settle every single debt. There is still one account that has not been settled, and that is my daughter's little face." I grabbed his hair and pulled him up. He gasped in pain and said, "Stop hitting me. If you hit me again, I will be beaten to death." I whispered, "It's you who died, not me." After saying that, I grabbed his head and slammed it hard against the car window. 1, 2, 3. The car window was finally broken. His face was covered with broken glass and blood. He finally knelt on the ground and pleaded with me, "I was wrong. I'm sorry." Just then I heard sirens in the distance. I squatted down, took one of his cigarettes and lit it. I sat on the green belt, leaning against the trees, listening to the police cars getting closer. At this time the phone rang. I picked up the phone and heard my wife's voice. "Honey, we're at the hospital." I hummed and said softly, "Are you and your daughter okay?" "Wait a minute, let me tell you." There was some noise on the other end of the line. I heard my wife encouraging me, "Daughter, scream again just like you did just now, scream again." I heard a very gentle and tender voice softly calling, "Dad." At this moment my nose felt sore and tears finally fell. Actually, I really wanted to cry just now. I was so scared and panicked, but I held it in and endured it. At this moment I finally couldn't hold it in anymore and sat on the ground crying. The word dad was so childish and unskilled. But I finally heard it. I said, "Well, the police are here. I might have to go to jail for a few years. Wait for me." "Did you hit him?" "I've got it. Don't worry." I hung up the phone. The police finally arrived. The police car drove up to us and stopped. When they saw this scene they were all stunned. A policeman couldn't help but say, "Aren't the brakes broken? Why does it look like a fight?" The driver of the white car was lying on the ground crying, "Police, save me." I spread my hands and said, "I'm sorry, I really can't help it." I got in the police car. I was taken to the police station, and the police told me that they had already closed all the entrances ahead and had police cars ready for escort, but they didn't expect that we would cause a commotion on the way. Fortunately, the police came to look for me together, so they caught up with me earlier. My wife was safely sent to the hospital, and both mother and daughter were fine. Fortunately, the screwdriver that pierced my wife's shoulder did not damage any important nerves or bones. The driver of the white car was very arrogant. After he was treated, he strongly demanded that I must pay a heavy price. Anyone who has experienced this understands that he just wants more compensation. So I gave in to his wishes and told the police, "It's okay, just sentence him. I won't pay him a penny more. We will go to jail together." After I expressed my thoughts, the driver of the white car panicked. They organized several negotiations, but I rejected them all. In the end, the driver of the white car became anxious and even proposed that both parties settle the matter, with no one asking for compensation and no one suing each other. Unfortunately, I still refused to reconcile. My meaning was very clear: let's go to jail together. The family of the driver of the white car panicked and asked me why I didn't want to reconcile. Is it glorious to go to jail? There's actually no reason. Just because I am the owner of a small workshop, although I don't make much money, I got in and my small factory is still open. But the driver of the white car is different. I learned that he was a senior executive of the company. Now he has nothing. Who would hire a criminal as a corporate executive? I have lost my job and my future, and it's not nice to say it out loud. Finally, the court made a ruling. The driver of the white car was suspected of intentional injury, dangerous driving and traffic accident and was sentenced to 3 years. I was not surprised at all to learn this result. It was because I knew he would receive a light sentence that I beat him. I broke both of his shoulders and burned one of his ears, precisely because I knew that the end result would not make me feel better. I know that the punishment for dangerous driving is very light. Unless it causes serious consequences such as the death of people, no matter how annoying the behavior is, the final sentence is detention. Even his traffic accident crime was not because he hurt my family. This guy was found fully responsible by the traffic police, and he was involved in dangerous driving, so the insurance company refused to pay compensation. The damage to my car exceeded 300,000 yuan, and he was unable to afford it, so he was charged with this traffic accident. Sometimes the cost of breaking the law is really low. Society is still progressing, and we can only hope that the laws will be more perfect in the future. He almost killed my wife and children. I don't want him to just accept the punishment of the law, I also want him to bear my wrath. By comparison, I would have received a heavier sentence. However, the court took into consideration the threat to the lives of my wife and daughter at the time and ultimately sentenced me to 3 years. I'm fine, I can write letters in prison. My wife would bring our daughter to see me and would also write to me asking me how to deal with things at the factory, and I would tell her everything. When my business partners heard about what happened to me, they asked their wives to tell me not to worry and that they would take good care of my orders. Although I was in prison, my family's financial life was not affected much. I just missed my wife and children very much. When my wife came to see me, she said the situation of the white car driver was very miserable. Of course, his company fired him without any compensation. The family's house had to be sold in a hurry because they could not pay off the loan, and they were back to the time before liberation. Because he was found fully responsible, his family is now in dire straits. After all, the compensation for the railings and other items is not a small amount. It is said that his wife and children have all run away, and he has become a lonely man with nothing left and a lot of debts. After hearing this, I just smiled and told my wife to wait for me to make the transformation. She said gently that she would wait for me. I behaved well in prison and was released after 2 years and 10 months. On the day I was released from prison, my wife and daughter came to pick me up. Over the past 2 years, my wife has been showing my photos to our daughter and teaching her about her father. So my daughter was not afraid of strangers. As soon as she saw me, she ran towards me, stretched out her arms and called me Dad. I picked her up, kissed her hard on the face and said gently, "Well, Daddy is back." I turned to my wife and asked, "Have you been bullied during the time I was away?" She said, "Your deeds are so brave, who dares to bully us? By the way, the driver of the white car has also been released." Then what? Then he committed suicide. He had nothing left and couldn't live anymore. What a joke. Yeah, it's funny. I carried my daughter into the car, patted her head and said gently, "Call me again." She called sweetly in my arms, "Daddy?" "Yeah, that's good."